If there were a place in the world where you could store and protect the truth, it might be deep in the Rockies, in a field, on a ranch, in a silo, where an American patriot tells you what keeps him awake at night. Now, here is Medal of Honor recipient Drew Dix and words from the Silo.
Welcome, folks, to episode 3 of The Silo. And like I said, the things that keep us up all night are just that. They keep us up all night. But to the viewers and listeners of this last program, there's obviously some things that kept you up all night. And that is when we did our episode on Readiness was females in the military. Mm-hmm. So we've dedicated this program to females in the military. Now, it's all not all of it's negative. There's a lot of positive about this. And I want to make it clear right up front. The women, females in the military is here to stay, and they do wonderful things. And when it comes right down to it, what we're concerned about is our readiness and the best fighting force that we can put together to defend this country.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Brad, what did you get from the callers?
Well, the one thing that came up a few times was, just about training records of females. Like, certainly it has to be records of performance and their training. And we talked off camera a little bit about some of the stuff with Ranger School. But maybe you could kind of take us into that, and you know a lot more than I would.
Well, obviously, that's a very good question because the military doesn't do very much without records. And I didn't go to Ranger School. In fact, my A-team supported the Ranger School. They used to send special forces down to help train the Rangers. So I know a little bit about it. But I do know that there are records out there, and someone knows this. And I don't want to repeat too many things that I've heard. So what we've done is we've gone through the process of a Freedom of Information Act to see if we can't get those records of how long it takes a female to get through Ranger School. Because let's face it, it's one of the most grueling programs within a service after you're already in that there is. Okay. And the whole idea is to make you physical and miserable to know how you're going to operate on the battlefield. So the Ranger School is a good example of can females hack it the same degree as a male. So
what'd you find out?
I still haven't got that request through STARS. I talked to you a little bit about STARS last time, and we're looking at we've got some FOIA requests in. Not all of them have been answered, but that's the one that I'm personally interested in, because we don't want us to object to something if we don't have the facts.
Right.
Like old Barney Barnum, the Colonel Barnum Marine Corps Medal of Honor recipient, said, if women in the military make the Marine Corps, he was referring to the Marine Corps, better place, I'm all for it.
Okay.
So we'll find out.
Well, that's good to know. I mean, do you have any specific experiences with females during your time?
Yeah, I do. Now in Vietnam, I didn't because there weren't many females in the combat units. There weren't any, I guess, at that time, and I'm just referring to the draft rifle company of draftees under the extreme conditions. And again, when I took over that rifle company, now first of all, you got to realize this: I'm an old man. I'm 28 now, right? My rifle company, average age was just under 19. They were all draftees except one or two career soldiers. And one of them stayed in the rear, the first sergeant. Then I took over that rifle company. And when I got out there and saw all these young guys, and they pick up those rucksacks, after the first 90-day cycle, I went back and I had them all weigh the rucksack, so I knew the average weight of a rucksack was 118 pounds. And they're carried by these guys up the toughest hills and terrain that you can imagine, and jumping out of helicopters when it's not touching on the ground. You know, it's very, very physical. Okay, so I didn't have females with me, so I don't know if they could have done it or not, but you know, we all know that their skeletal structure is not the same. And the worst thing that I could imagine is when a guy jumps off a helicopter with 118 or 20 pounds. Some of them were heavier because what their job was, and to break an ankle going down, they're a casualty already. Mm-hmm. So I was concerned with that with even the strongest guys. But later in my career, not much later, when I went back to Fort Bragg and got on an assignment, and at that time we were transitioning from the Women's Army Corps to integrating women into the military. And, you know, as a young soldier, I look back at the experiences with females in the military, and I never looked at them as being inferior, if I can say that word, because there's some people that felt that way, mm-hmm. I guess, but I didn't. I was a young guy, you know. But
you know, those words, you know, that are so popular right now.
I never heard of those words until just a couple of years ago.
What do they mean, like, to you, and you know, as they apply to? I mean, we all know their, you know, their words.
Well,
that we know.
If you rearrange DEI, you got DIE, die, and if you do too much of it, somebody's going to die unnecessarily. And diversity, the U.S. military, as I said in the last episode, has always been diverse, but that's through talent in the draft. We brought in people. It was not driving it. It was a product of the draft. And I'm, you know, we get into it, I'm all in favor of the draft again. Yeah. And somebody's got to get some plans here. Some people want women in combat, but they don't want to draft women. I'm pretty sure that would be a big problem.
Yeah.
And then equity means, you know, we treat everybody equally. Well, I guess, but when you go to basic training, in my day now, we had the draft, and we had people of different physical abilities, mental abilities, and some down here, and the idea was to get everybody thinking the same. Nobody better than anybody else. Mm-hmm. That was the drill instructor's mission, to keep everybody as equal as they can, so they knew what the capabilities was.
So equity's earned in that situation because you train and you get everybody on the same sheet of music, not just, okay, well, here's the equity.
Yeah, we're going to make you smarter than me, and there's no way.
No, heck no, there's no way.
And then inclusion, I guess that means includes everybody. So if you're, I don't know, you could look it up, but you're including everybody into, if I want to tell a joke, I have to include somebody else, and I have no intention of it being a discriminatory or excluding anybody. I just didn't want to tell it with other people's ears, right? Maybe a young person or something. And there's humor in the military, but then they say, "Oh, well, you're excluding me," and then you get corrected for that. So you include them, and they correct you because you told an off-color joke.
Why has this gained so much traction?
Probably for ignorance. You know, we're a country we've got politics involved. Politics is killing us in a lot of ways, and they need to keep it out of the military. Let the politicians mix their own brew and take it if they can, but leave the military and our intelligence agencies alone, because we have a distasteful mission for a lot of people. Our mission, whether any of the people listening to this or watching us, believe it or not, is to kill the enemy before they kill us. And if we do that, we'll win our wars. Right. What I'm really afraid of, absolutely afraid of, keeps me up, is we've got a mindset now that we can go to a war and maybe lose it and come home, like Afghanistan. What if we go to war and we can't lose it?
Right.
There's a difference. Guarantee you there's not too much DEI in Ukraine and Russia right now. I don't think there is.
Yeah, no, and they're engaged.
They're engaged, yep.
So, one of the questions that came up from our last episode, because we touched on it pretty good, but I think it's worth repeating. How significant are captured females to our enemy?
Oh, yeah, you retouched on it, because it is top of my line. Because my business in my first job in the Special Forces was to capture the enemy. Now, if we captured an enemy sympathizer or a VC that was female, it was no different than a male as far as we're concerned, or they're concerned. But I guarantee you now, if you just listen to the news, even with the IDF in Israel, they talk about captured females and children. Can you imagine if we had as little as 100 or 200 or 300 or several hundred females captured, along with males? You think they'd be talking about the males captured? No, we had so many captured, and they were mostly females.
And what are the threats to the females that aren't threats to men?
Well, the logical one is they can use them. They could be sexually mistreated, abused, and let me tell you, they don't even have to do that. They can say they did it. And with cameras and stuff now, the fellow captives would be seeing what maybe somebody else was giving in or whatever. Pregnancies, whether they're from, the captors or fellow soldiers. But here's another thing, that those of you that have been in the military know that there are times in training that it's really tough, and you're dreading it, right? And maybe civilians too. You hear you got to take your driver's test. Oh man, it's going to be terrible. And you build up, and you get this nervousness about it. And then it's nothing. It's not as bad as you think it might be, right? But when you, I've known young, strong, studly guys that were nervous about a training event, and if they get a call, oh, the grandmother died, oh, guys, I'm sorry, I got to go and do this. I wish I was with you, but they're actually relieved in a way. I mean, I'm probably oversimplifying it, but it's a fact. But if a female has more opportunity to not go to the training because she's pregnant, or it's automatically she's eliminated because she is pregnant, what does that cost to the military in dollars and cents and fighting capability of a unit?
What does it, and also talk to me about morale. I mean, does that, when we lower the bar, so to speak, and make these exceptions, what does that do for morale? Let's say an upcoming soldier, Drew Dix type of soldier,
Well, when you're building a warrior class of people, now we got units that are non-front lines, like the 101st is a air assault school, is very rugged, and they're proud of it. when I was in the Arctic Infantry, 9th Infantry at 4th Battalion, 9th Infantry in Alaska, we were proud that we were the toughest cold weather unit in the world, we thought. That's what we believed.
Mm-hmm.
But if you start to lose that and you lose that idea that you aren't the tough, you can only say it so much. You actually have to be the toughest. And if you have to, if not all of you can muster a formation and go to the field because of various disabilities, temporary or whatever, then that takes you down.
Mm-hmm.
And I know guys that have gone to the field because they didn't want to have the shame of saying that they couldn't do this. They had to go to a sick call or something.
Mm-hmm.
And if there's distasteful training or combat, if someone says that they can't do it because they're on medications or something for something,
Yeah.
A pregnancy or whatever, what does that do for us? We all have making everybody the same. That was the mission of the basic training, and we're not all the same.
Mm.
we
So
can't be.
in an effort to make it equity, it's not.
It's not.
It's not equity.
No.
In this conversation.
Yeah, and in this conversation. Now, again, I could tell more stories where females have done a wonderful job in the military. And there's a few in World War II where in the paramilitary side they parachuted behind the lines, and they did some good work. By all means, let's do it. But if we're putting them in combat, in a combat unit, not a specially selected deal where you pick one to go do something, a special mission because you wanted a female or you wanted somebody that could do it. But when you take the numbers, and let's say we draft, because they can't make it equity and then have no draft, but let's say we have a draft, and in Vietnam they had a lottery. What if 50% of the people were female that had that lottery number?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you got 50%. And they're making special clothing for pregnant women so they feel like they're a part of the unit, especially camouflage clothing if they're pregnant. They aren't going to deploy, so why spend that excessive amount of money to make them feel good?
Mm-hmm.
And some people would say, well, that's pretty hard. But let's face it, war's hard. Just don't forget that. Then all this other stuff makes more sense.
Yeah.
And again, I've talked about Patricia, my wife, who can do most anything on that ranch out there. But she said, I don't want to be in the military and be captured because I don't know what would happen.
Yeah.
And she's a pretty hardy soul.
Right.
Like I said, fly airplanes. She's a mechanic. She can do about anything.
Yep.
Raised in Alaska. She can do about anything. But when you have, it doesn't matter whether that female doesn't mind being captured that really wanted to, and she is captured. It's what the press would do.
Sure.
What about, can you recall, Brad, during Desert Storm when Jessica Lynch, remember that name?
Oh, yeah.
PFC, I think she was a PFC, and she was in a vehicle and they made a wrong turn. She got captured. Now, they went in and got her, but there was talk about her getting a Medal of Honor,
Yeah.
And there was brief talk about it. For what,
Yeah. Well, I mean, and you, there's criterias for all that stuff, and
Well, and besides that, I can't leave it at there because I heard her say against that. I mean, why would I get a Medal of Honor,
sure.
But so what we do is it's our nature to put women on a pedestal.
And that's nothing wrong with that.
No, I like it. Why do we fight wars? We fight because we believe in what we're all about.
Sure.
And some of the enemies we have don't put women on a pedestal. So are you going to trade women for women? If they wouldn't even be in combat in in a Muslim world. They might be doing some explosive. A lot of females, they use them as to carry explosives and blow themselves up. I remember a few cases like that, but they do it with a different mindset. I'm very familiar with one of those operations, but where they use Chechen women to bomb the theater in Moscow, and to get them motivated to do it, they said, well, you're not worth anything. Do one good thing in your life before you die. And that, so it's a different
that's
deal.
pretty harsh.
So how can you deal with an enemy like that? And we have to deal with all kinds of folks. And the Chinese probably don't have a lot of females in their military, or if they were captured, I don't think Kim Jong-un would worry too much about how many females were captured if they were in the military. We do.
Yeah.
And we should. They're the mothers of our children. And that's what it's all about. If that sounds old-fashioned, so be it. But there's a whole bunch of people, I think, in this country that think the way I do. And again, we talk about double standards. We've talked a little bit about it before, and this people that are protecting female sports.
Yeah.
And they don't want the men in those sports because of it's not fair physically, or if they are a combative sport, their skeletal structure is not the same. And then the same females are going to say they need to have a right to be in the military.
Well, and it's not even comparable, just because the military is so much more serious, because it's life or death combat versus sports. And also in those sports, they're not even competing against the best males.
No, that's
and
right.
They're still losing.
That's right. So, we're getting a little off subject, but even when I was a young guy at 14, 15 years old, and sports was a pretty big deal. Basketball, wrestling was a big sport. And to myself, I remember thinking, there's no women's sports. Girls, they just, they have ROTC sponsors, and they could be on the rifle team or something, but there were no women's sports. And I said, that's not fair. And then I'm not an activist, but I did my life, and then now women have sports in schools. It's great. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
But now they're tearing it all apart. It doesn't seem to matter.
Doesn't make sense.
No.
You mentioned ROTC and the rifle. How are women as marksmen, from your experience?
From my experience, they're very good marksmen.
Yeah.
I have been totally amazed every time I show somebody how to shoot a rifle, and they've never shot one, or a pistol, and they can hit the target.
Yeah.
Women have an uncanny ability to really hit the target.
Because that was one of the questions that came up about them being good shots and things like that, and that's great. Because there's a place.
Oh, and so maybe sniper somewhere in the rear, protective, whatever, in the rear element. And we're going to have to train every female, and we're going to have some, and we need them in the military, to be defensive combat. There is a difference in offensive combat, where you're picking that machine gun up and running up a hill and using it, as opposed to being in a fixed position and somebody bringing in ammunition and picking them off. And there's some of the famous snipers in World War II were females.
Mm-hmm. Do you think there's just a thought process that there's not going to be a lot of running up hills and having that kind of combat? Is that one of the reasons we're getting weak on our readiness?
Well, Brad, I'm surprised. That's a very good question, because I guess I'm surprised that it came from you. But no, I'm just being a little facetious. But since 2001, our war has been different. And if some of these members of Congress say that they can do this because they leave their FOB, their fob, and go out on a convoy, or go out overnight and do something and come back, that's a little different than being out on a front line for months and months and months.
Mm-hmm.
And so those decision makers, even in the military, are using a criteria that's more modern. Now, the battlefield's changing. we all know about the drones. Hundreds of thousands of drones being used every month on both sides in Ukraine and Russia. But that doesn't take away. You see some of those footages, and those soldiers are in foxholes and trenches for long periods of time.
Would you consider drone piloting defensive or offensive?
Well, that's. I think drone pilots is a good place for women. I think actual piloting is a good. I've got a good friend, Medal of Honor recipient. I think a granddaughter is a Black Hawk pilot. Fine, that's fine.
Yeah.
But I think we need to have the actual military service member and the public agree on what the consequences are if you're captured.
Yeah, that's...
We've had air superiority and ground superiority in all of Afghanistan most of the time, so there's no real risk of being overrun.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't take much if you're overrun. In Vietnam, I remember overrunning an enemy unit. You overrun them and you pick up all that's left. It could happen.
Yeah.
May only be temporary, but if they snatched a prisoner of war, there's countries that write their prisoners of war off. If they're captured, they write them off until the war's over.
And why is that? They just don't. They can't. They don't want to be leveraged like what would happen in our situation.
I don't know if even being leveraged is a good reason, except they can't afford it. It's very expensive to run operations that don't gain you any ground.
Makes sense. So how on this Freedom of Info Act that we talked about, the FOIA, that is something that should be able to release the records and the things we talked about earlier.
Yeah, I'm very. I'm hoping that we get some of those records because right now, by withholding them, the rumors are flying.
Yeah.
Right? I've heard a bunch, and I don't even want to repeat some of them about how many times a female is recycled before they can graduate. I don't know, but I hear that. I hear some other stories. Once it's out, and we'll find out the facts.
Yeah.
But we've just got to get down to business. When I went in the Army at Pueblo at 17, took that bus and went up north to Denver, I signed the dotted line, but I didn't automatically get in. They give you a physical. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to pass. I wasn't drafted. I wanted to pass. And you couldn't join the Army if you had flat feet. Now I don't have flat feet, but I was looking at them thinking, are they straight arched enough? Because they're not arched like some.
Yeah. And
so I worried about it.
Yeah.
So that means they don't take everybody.
Sure. That's okay.
You don't. If you got a bad back, you can't go in there. If you're, whatever. So we're gonna ignore all that, and then take people that just because they're a female.
Right. Well, I'd like to take this moment to thank the sponsors for tonight's show. Again, it's the Center for American Values, near and dear to both our hearts. The Media Center, some of our production team, and if you like this podcast, make sure you like the show on YouTube. Make sure you join our channel. DrewDixPodcast.com is where you can go online and listen on your favorite platforms, Spotify or Amazon, Apple, all the platforms, or watch us on YouTube. If you can't stand the way we look, make sure you listen. But DrewDixPodcast.com. And we have the call-in line that's probably flashing on the screen once in a while, so you can leave us a voicemail. But, as we wrap up this show today, do you have anything other thoughts on these questions we received? We had too many to be able to filter them all in here.
No, I don't have any other thoughts. And if you haven't figured it out by now, I'll answer the damn question.
No doubt.
Because whether I want the answers. I want to sleep at night. I'm doing better now, but I think we're on a roll. We're going to get to the bottom of this. I think the Secretary, Head Seth, is on the right road to make sure that we don't lower the standards
Yep.
of any of the qualifying tests that you have to take. And that's going to be a start right there. But at the same time, figure out how we're going to handle this if we have a draft.
Yep. Absolutely. Well, that's all I've got.
And that's all I've got until next time. And just remember, tolerance is a character flaw.
Just because no one knows doesn't mean it isn't true.